Spring often comes late to Wisconsin, but that doesn't mean you get to sit around and wait for the ground to thaw. There's lots to do indoors and out. Welcome to the Wisconsin Gardener. I'm your host, Shelley Ryan. On this edition of the Wisconsin Gardener, we'll help you be ready for spring's arrival. For instance, do you know how to properly fertilize your soil? And what's the difference between top dressing and side dressing? We'll help take the confusion out of fertilization. Now is the perfect time of year to choose an evergreen for your yard. Dwarf conifers provide great winter interest, so we'll head outdoors to pick one that's right for you. But first up, we'll look at what's new and hot in the world of sunflowers. Nowadays they come in all sorts of colors and sizes. That's next on the Wisconsin Gardener.
Production of the Wisconsin Gardener is made possible in part by Jung's Seed and Nursery Company, with garden centers in Randolph, Stevens Point, Madison, and Sun Prairie. Fiskars, a Wisconsin manufacturer of ergonomic cutting tools for the home and garden, distributed worldwide. And the Ahrens Foundation, the charitable arm of the Ahrens Company, Brillion, Wisconsin, maker of lawn and garden power equipment for consumer and commercial markets worldwide.
One of the greatest joys of planning ahead for the growing season is being able to pick new and exciting varieties to grow in my garden every year. Lately, I found myself increasingly fascinated by some of the new varieties of sunflowers coming out. I'm with Leanne Gensch, and we're in Randolph, Wisconsin. And Leanne, you work for Jung's Seed Company, and you test a wide variety of flowers, vegetables in their test plots. Can you tell me a little about that?
Well, we try to trial everything on a 3 to 5 year basis and get a good idea of how things grow in Wisconsin.
So we're really getting an idea of how they're going to perform for us in our own backyards.
Right.
Well, what about sunflowers? They have come a long way since the big single stalk and the single head.
What we're seeing now are a lot of the branching types that can be used for cut flowers. And then rather than just the big bloom, you can get the side flowers also.
So you've got some ones that you're fairly excited about here.
Right.
This one?
This one is Autumn Beauty. It gets to be about 6 to 8 feet tall, so you can also use it if you're growing annual vines nearby. We put sunflowers in our children's collection along with morning glory seeds so that it's like a living trellis.
So these will stand up pretty much by themselves and then the vines just grow right up them.
Right.
Okay.
This particular variety is in solids and bicolors, anywhere from cream yellow to a mahogany color.
Almost chocolate highlights in some of these petals here. It's beautiful. Now, you said that some of the ones we're seeing now are multi-branched. Are that the buds I'm looking at here is what you mean there?
Right. Oftentimes, what you would get would be the main flower. It might be a little bit bigger, but then the side buds open up and give you nice blooms too.
So we're getting a lot more bloom time than from a single large stalk and a single flower. Okay. And what about this one? The colors on this are absolutely gorgeous.
This is Floristan. We call that a wine, and it has the yellow highlights, but this variety only gets to be about 4 feet tall.
So we're getting a lot shorter here then. Do I plant these indoors like I would start tomato seeds, or what's the best way to grow these in Wisconsin?
Well, we prefer to start them outside, direct seeding, just like you would corn after the last frost.
Okay.
We planted ours this year around the middle of June, and by the middle of August we had beautiful blooms.
So we can go that late and still get flowers by the end of the growing season?
Right.
All right. That's a beautiful one. Now, that's a 4-footer, but you said that that's one of the neat changes that kind of happening in the sunflower world. What is different about this one? What's special?
This is called Music Box. This only grows to be 2 to 2.5 feet tall. And it's kind of a miniature version of the Autumn Beauty, again with the solid and the bicolor blooms. And it would make a nice front border.
So this is not when we'd grow vines up then?
No, but it would be nice for children that they could walk up and see it at their level.
Sure, just about eye level. Well, how do all of these perform as a cut flower? They obviously have some great colors.
They hold up very well. In an arrangement, you have your vibrant colors and now the whole range of colors that they're coming out in, and they do make nice combinations in a bouquet.
Oh, they're really striking. You're going to see them from a distance too. Now, this is one, you've hinted that this is a brand new variety.
Right, this is called Pacino, and what's neat about this, it can also be grown very well in a container. In a small container, it gets to be about 10 inches tall.
Wow.
If you direct seed it in the garden, again 2 to 2.5 feet tall, with the bright yellow petals and then a smaller center.
Almost a green center, too. Very striking. And very strong stem, so it would stand up well in a container or as a cut flower.
Right.
One of the reasons that I like to grow sunflowers, particularly even the old varieties, they seem to attract a lot of birds, goldfinches to my yard, especially in the late season, even after the frost. With these newer varieties, will I still attract birds?
Well, with some of them you'll be able to, but there are new pollenless types coming onto the market. They work better for the floral industry. They're not as messy, but then you wouldn't have the seed production like you would with the other types.
So the ones we've talked about here?
Those would all work well if you wanted to feed the birds. What we do is we leave some of the seed heads out in the fall after we're done with our fall cleanup.
So not only are you getting pleasure out of them, but then the critters are too.
Right.
Well, do you have one here that's an all-time favorite?
Well, music box would have to be my favorite, just because you have the different colors, and with the short height, you can plant it in the front of the garden and enjoy it all summer.
Great, great choice. Thanks, Leanne. So whether you're looking for something really tall or very short, there's a sunflower just for you. This is the time of year where I do a lot of my gardening indoors, going through my seed catalogs, trying to pick plants for spring. I'm with Master Gardener Doris Kistler, and Doris, I'm hearing a lot of people tell me that now they're using their computer to help plan for spring. Now, I've got access to the internet. I've done some browsing on the World Wide Web. All I get is lost. Can you show me how that I might actually use this as a gardener?
Well, I could make some suggestions. One suggestion that I would make is to start from one of the garden gateways. A garden gateway is a website that organizes other websites by category.
It organizes it like a directory, then?
That's correct. Okay. There are many of them out there. They cover about 80% of the same topics, and I think you just have to choose one that you're comfortable with. I particularly like gardening.com. Notice we have the site directory down here. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I like this particular directory is that it lists topics that I'm interested in, and it lets me choose information that has to do specifically with the Midwest. Oh. For example, if I'm interested in pest and looking up something on pest or diseases, I could choose Midwest, and I would only get that information.
Hey, that's a great idea. Why should we look at a disease that's only in California?
Right. Or if I'm interested in organic gardening per se.
What about Great Gardens? What is that?
Great Gardens would give us information on botanic gardens, public gardens, arboreta, worldwide, or we could select just Midwest. Okay.
Now, can we actually look at this? The computer will allow us to visually tour these gardens?
Yes, we can.
Oh. All right, well, one of the things I'm doing a lot of this time of year is picking plants that I'm going to grow. So I'm doing a lot of browsing through, my encyclopedias, my seed catalogs. How can the computer help with that?
Well, of course, most of the nursery catalogs, seed catalogs are available online. But one thing I'd like to show you that I think is particularly useful when you're selecting plants is this plant encyclopedia. Oh, wow. For example, suppose you wanted to select some ground covers.
Okay.
Notice we have a lot of different selections here, but we're going to pick a ground cover. We don't really care when it blooms, but you could pick a bloom season.
Okay, let's pick blue.
Okay, let's pick blue. And let's pick partial sun.
Okay.
Most of us don't have completely sunny yards. We should pick zone 4, but just so that we get a larger selection, why don't we be brave here and pick zone 5.
Dangerous. Now, it's actually pulling up plants that meet our criteria.
Right.
Wonderful.
See, we have a fairly large selection. These are all ground covers that bloom in partial shade with blue flowers.
Let's try the campanula.
Okay, we can get some more information on the campanula.
Now, it enlarges the photo. That's nice.
And it gives us a description, a short description of this particular plant. Okay. I'm not even familiar with this one. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Let's listen to the pronunciation.
Campanula posharskiana.
Now that my seed catalogs can't do.
That's correct.
That's fascinating. Okay, now we've picked a plant, and I think it's useful to have that pronunciation because you can go to the nursery and get the wrong plant if you can't say it correctly. I mean, that's useful to have the scientific name handy.
That's correct. And you know, we can even buy this plant over the internet.
Well, let's look at another. Let's buy me another blue plant. Why don't you?
Okay, we can. Suppose I really like the Brunera. What about the Brunera?
Okay, now you're saying I can actually shop through here.
We can indeed. Now you could go to a particular seed catalog or nursery catalog, but one of the things that I'd like to show you is one of the garden centers or garden stores that's available only on the internet. This is a site that has plants, seeds, heirloom vegetables, gardening tools,
and you're
furniture.
This one won't arrive in my mailbox.
No, this one will not.
Okay.
So let's type in what we're interested in here, or Brunera.
Now it's actually searching to see if it has that plant for sale.
Yes, it is.
Oh.
And notice it has 2 cultivars. Would you like to purchase one of these?
The blue one.
Okay. How many?
3. Now, are you actually filling out an order?
We're in the process of doing that. What we want to do now is to add this to our shopping cart or wheelbarrow, as they refer to it. And notice that it tells us what we've ordered so far. We could order more if we wanted to.
Good.
Or we could just place our order right now by clicking on this button and entering our credit card, name, and address, and we'd be all done.
Well, this would be definitely a way to use the computer.
It certainly is. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, Shelley. You just mustn't be afraid to look at this as a great tool for gardening. Just dig in.
Okay, thanks, Doris. So consider the computer as possibly a future tool for your garden. Very soon now we're going to be planting our flowers and vegetables in the garden, and then we're going to have to start thinking about feeding those plants. Fertilizing instructions can be confusing, so I'm with UW Extension soil scientist Sherry Combs to try to clarify the matter. You know, Sherry, I get these instructions. Some say top dress, side dress. My soil test results said broadcast. What does it all mean?
Let's clarify those in a minute. We want to first maybe spend a little bit of time, and hopefully you've gotten a soil test of your garden area, so you've got your results to work from. Next step you have to think about when fertilizing is the grade of fertilizer that you're going to purchase.
So buy the proper stuff.
Yeah, you got to buy the right stuff, and you can go to your local lawn and garden center and look at the grade on the front of the box or bag. And
these numbers.
Those numbers there, 5, 10, 5. It refers to nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium.
Okay.
Always in that order. And so you can match up what your soil test report recommends for grade with what you can purchase in the store. That's the first step. Next is to understand how much you need to apply.
Well, and that's confusing too, because my soil test results said to use a pound of fertilizer per 100 square feet. I don't have a scale, so I just took the bag out into the garden.
Most people do, unfortunately, and they way over apply.
Probably.
An easy way to avoid needing a scale is to just measure out about 2 1/4 to 2½ cups of fertilizer, and that's about equivalent to a pound.
So this equals the pound?
Yes.
Okay. Now that's not a lot though for 100 square feet.
No, assuming if that's your garden area, you've got to spread that very carefully in order to have it spread uniformly.
Okay, let's talk about the spreading.
Yeah, let's take you through a garden season here with the different types of fertilizer application methods that we have, and we recommend different ones for different crops at different parts of the growing season.
Okay.
The first and probably most important is the broadcast application. And that's really just taking your fertilizer that you've measured and knowing the area that you want to fertilize and spreading it evenly over the soil surface, either by hand or with a drop spreader.
Now we're doing this before we've planted anything.
Yes, you don't have anything planted in here, because after you spread it on the surface, you're going to come in with some tillage. Either your rototiller, digging, whatever you can do.
And you say that this is the most important one of the entire growing season, really?
Yeah, we apply the bulk of the plant needs at this time, and also we're able to incorporate it in the rooting zone of the plant. So we're not just limiting what the plant can use. We're incorporating it through the whole root volume.
Okay, what about side dressing then? What does that refer to?
Well, side dressing is a specialized technique for later in the growing season when crops are growing very vigorously and sometimes they run out of nitrogen. And so we use a material that has a high nitrogen value.
The first number.
First number on the box.
Okay.
And assuming if this was our high nitrogen material, we would be applying a band of fertilizer.
Alongside the plants?
Alongside all the plants.
Is there too close? What distance?
Yeah, if you get too close, you can get some root burn. So you keep it 3 to 6 inches away from the base of the plant.
Now, am I actually digging this in?
You might be following it with some light cultivation.
Light.
Or, yes,
Okay.
light because of root damage. And crops that you might be applying, using side dressing on, sweet corn, tomatoes, carrots, long season crops.
Okay. Well, now, this is my hypothetical perennial bed. You know, these are permanent and they're up. There are no rows, so I can't side dress. I obviously can't broadcast and do any digging. I'll kill them.
Yeah. Well, now you have to rely on a top dress application.
Okay.
And again, using the grade that's recommended on your soil test report, you're going to come in and just over the tops of the plants.
Right on the plants?
Yeah, right on the plants, apply your fertilizer. Now you can see maybe in some areas here we've had some fertilizer stick on the leaves. And so you want to make sure that you either brush the leaves off or irrigate so that you can wash the fertilizer granule off the leaf and avoid the burn that you might get.
So do it before rain or get out there with the hose?
Yes.
Okay. And that takes me through most of the growing season?
The whole growing season, I think that takes you through.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sherry.
All right.
But remember, the most important step is the first one, the right fertilizer properly measured. I'm at the UW-Madison Arboretum with Professor Emeritus of Horticulture, Dr. Ed Hasselkus, to shop for an evergreen. Ed, there's snow on the ground is frozen, and it's cold out here. Why would we be shopping for an evergreen now?
With these long Wisconsin winters, Shelley, when we select landscape plants, it's the conifers that give us life and color in the winter landscape.
So it's a good time to see how it would hold up against the snow in our own yard.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we're standing in front of a mature Scots pine.
Massive tree.
And do you happen to notice anything special about it, Shelley?
Yeah, it has a very strange growth right there. What is that?
We call it a witch's broom.
Okay.
And a witch's broom is really a bud sport that happens spontaneously.
Like a mutation?
Sort of like a mutation. Okay. And it results in this sort of congested mass of twigs. And this is where we get dwarf conifers from. Now, to propagate this witch's broom, we might take cuttings or scions and propagate them vegetatively. And then the offspring will look exactly like the witch's broom.
Miniatures then?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, if it happens to produce cones, and the cones have viable seeds, then we might collect that seed, sow them out, and there the offspring will vary from looking like the witch's broom. Some will be normals, some will be in between, maybe even a miniature. And so we can get an array of different types in that way.
And this is where all dwarf conifers come from, is this type of mutation?
That's correct, yes.
Could we look at how some of them work in the landscape then?
Yes.
Okay.
Shelley, here's an example of a dwarf form of the Scots pine. It has the unpronounceable name of Bovranensis, so we'll call it the dwarf Scots pine.
Good idea.
About 20 years old.
So it's at its full size?
Yes.
Wow.
And it's very, very dense, as you can see, and a good garden kind of conifer. Now, this requires very little care because dwarf conifers don't put on much growth, so pruning is almost not really important.
So an excellent low-maintenance plant.
Yes, yes. One of the maintenance procedures, though, that is required here is to reach in there and pull out the dead accumulated needles. That tends to interfere with air movement through the plant and may result in disease problems.
Okay, so we're just improving the air circulation by taking the stuff out of there.
Yes,
now,
yes.
Do we have to worry about the heavy snow load on these?
Actually, I've never seen any winter injury from snow load or ice load. So not something with at least pines we don't have to worry about.
Okay. Now, you said it's not just Scots pines, there are other kinds of dwarf conifers.
Let's look at a couple other examples.
Okay.
A spruce now.
Okay.
Here, Shelley, we see the normal Norway spruce with large cones on it. And here up close we see the nest Norway spruce, one of the most popular dwarf forms of that species.
It's incredible how delicate even the needles are on this compared to the full-size one.
Yes, and it does have a depression here in the center, hence the name nest Norway spruce.
Okay.
And as we look at this 20-year-old plant, it's perhaps about 2.5 feet tall, about 3.5 feet in spread.
Very delicate looking.
Yes. And now in terms of care here, spruces require a little more moisture than the pines, and so mulching is important to retain soil moisture. Also, these dwarf conifers are not very competitive with weeds.
They're so small.
And so mulching is a good idea there too.
So really, other than mulching, there is very little to do to these.
One of the great advantages of the dwarf conifers. We have one more to look at, a fir in this case.
Okay.
Shelley, behind us is the full-scale white or concolor fir. And then before us here we have the compact white or concolor fir, about a 20-year-old plant, derived from a witch's broom again.
Beautiful color on these needles, very striking.
Bright blue and upturned, and nice textural quality.
Yeah.
Now this is taller than the other plants we've looked at, and instead of dwarf conifers, maybe a better term is garden conifers. Conifers that are in scale with residential landscapes.
So these are going to fit a lot easier for most of us than the full size.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Ed. And all the trees we've talked about grow in full sun anywhere in Wisconsin. Still looking for the perfect evergreen for your yard? A yew like this one is more shade tolerant than other evergreens, but it will suffer from too much exposure to winter wind and sun, so plant it on the north or east side of your home. Well, good luck this growing season, and thanks for joining me on the Wisconsin Gardener.
Production of The Wisconsin Gardener was made possible in part by Jung Seed and Nursery Company, with garden centers in Randolph, Stevens Point, Madison, and Sun Prairie. Fiskars, a Wisconsin manufacturer of ergonomic cutting tools for the home and garden, distributed worldwide. And the Ahrens Foundation, the charitable arm of the Ahrens Company, Brillion, Wisconsin, maker of lawn and garden power equipment for consumer and commercial markets worldwide.